All right, in this episode today, we're going to be talking about some current political events that have been happening and some things that the current administration is trying to push forward that we disagree with. And we're going to kind of break those things down and talk about them, give a little more explanation on them and what you should be looking out for. But more specifically, we talk about the importance of being involved politically and how it's very important with the overall focus of everything just within the Minutemen kind of mentality. If you're not involved in current politics and you're not doing your own part to really be involved and understand what's going on and understand the processes, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So we really get into that and kind of explain how you can be involved and really break down the importance of being involved. So hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
Dedicated men and women of the AFT, I'm proud to nominate Steve Diddleback as Director of Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. He works side by side to support the work of federal, state, and local law enforcement, including AFT agents. And one of those was his case he was personally tried as what I've know about him and why I'm so enthusiastic about supporting him. I'd like to introduce my nominee to lead the AFT to you, all of you. Steve, come on up here.
Yeah. President of the United States. AFT, man.
Yep.
AFT all the way.
Dude. I love that he says the acronym AFT, but then he actually says it right. He says the division correctly.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, where are you?
Oh, he's not.
But he's not even a focal point at all.
No.
I mean,
everyone knows that. He's just a puppet, so.
Yeah, dude, the dual drink. Dude, the double commit. That's Radio 101, dude. You can't do it. Just the dead airwaves. You see me rush mine? I got to get a real drink now.
Yeah. Dude, what's funny? Is that? Oh no! I wasn't paying attention to you over there, and I was like, oh man, I'm thirsty. I'm gonna go grab. And as I'm grabbing mine, I see that you got one in your hand. I'm like, oh no!
Yep. Dude, I bailed on it so fast. I was just like, get back into talking. So there's no dead air.
Oh, I haven't laughed like that in a podcast in a while since basically Caden's been here.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. So it goes without saying, we're in here to talk about something really important, and that is political warfare. That is the willingness and responsibility we have as citizens to actually get involved in local politics, local and federal politics. I mean, it starts at the local level. I think so many people. What?
I still just can't get over that double drink. But anyways, yeah, sorry.
So many people get so hyper focused on presidential elections, for example. The reality is this political kind of constant. It's warfare. I mean, it's a constant back and forth. It's most people kind of relegate it to two sides, but I think it's a lot more than that. It's a battle of beliefs. There's people have different beliefs and different principles and different ideas.
Yeah, and just because you ride on one side of, whether you're Republican or you're more liberal thinking or whatever, it doesn't mean that each candidate's going to have certain focal points that they kind of focus on. So it isn't a sides game.
No.
I mean, me and you seem to be more conservative thinking. So
yeah, in general, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So, but that being said, I mean, there's plenty of libertarians that I've looked at their beliefs and I've been like, yeah, that these guys kind of make sense. They're never going to get the vote, but
Well, I mean, I think playing the sides game is a terrible way to look at this. I think it's a lazy way to look at this. I think people kind of are like, hey, I'm on this side. So anybody that says they're on this side, I'm just going to kind of blindly follow them.
Yeah.
Let them do what they say they're going to do. And it's not the case. I mean, it's proven time and time again. I mean, we have a senator in our own state, Lisa Murkowski, who's a great example of that.
Yeah.
She is so unpredictable, and, well, honestly, she's become more predictable. But the most left-leaning Republican or conservative candidate I've ever seen. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Some of the stuff, it's like, wait, how? Like, how can you run as that party? A lot of people use the term rhino. So, and she very much is one. And that's just one example. There's tons of people like that. So, and it's a great, and it's someone that's been here, one of our Alaska senators now for years.
Way too long. And I think they should have a limit, but that's all right.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't think there ever will be one, just because of how it all works, and there's so much money involved in greed and, honestly, corruption. But I don't want this to turn into an Alex Jones show. We'll talk about they're meeting at Bilderberg meetings. Bohemian Grove. No, but we're going to talk today about how you can get involved, the importance of being involved, and how not only is it important, but it's our responsibility. And there are so many things happening right now. So I think that's where we'll start. We're gonna dig into this, and we're gonna talk about it. But just to kind of preface this whole podcast episode today, as you're going on through that Minuteman mentality of being prepared, being ready at a moment's notice, you can't be ready and be prepared without preparation.
Yeah.
And going beyond that, I think one of the most important things we can do in an effort to prepare is preventative measures. And preventative measures starts right now. It's stopping things from happening, standing up for what's right, for what we believe in right now with this system we have in place now, instead of waiting for things to degrade into something else and then thinking you'll have any kind of say at that point.
Yeah.
It's foolhardy. And it's just something that, if you're into this stuff, and we'll talk about this a little more later, but if you're into all of this stuff, you're into training, you're into preparing, you're into, fitness and gathering materials and working on marksmanship and working on tactics, working with a team, coordinating, these are all things you're working towards, then being involved in the political effort, at a minimum in your local community, is just part of that. That's just a part of coordinating. That's just a part of the whole core value or core importance of being a coordinated individual with others. Like, that just is part of that mission. When we came up with our 8 kind of core points that we have, as far as being a responsible citizen and being kind of that Minuteman, being ready, willing, and able. Coordination is a huge part of that, and being politically coordinated was always a part of that vision when we made that.
Yeah.
Like, it's non-negotiable. So we're going to talk about, kind of something we want to try to do from now on is anytime there's something going on, we're going to do our best to get it out there. Unfortunately, so we do record our podcasts kind of in advance so we can schedule them. We want to stay ahead. So this will be launching, well, it doesn't matter. Whenever you're listening to this, just know about a week prior we recorded it. So
yeah.
Today's the 11th or the 12th. So we're recording on the 12th. So as of today, things could change by the time it launches. But as of today, we are looking at a few things coming down the pipeline. The Biden administration just nominated their new, or just brought forward their new nominee for the AFT, excuse me, the ATF. But their new nominee for the ATF. And he is, again, a very, very left-leaning, honestly, anti-gun person. Just like Chipman. Honestly, some people are saying he's worse. So, big problem. The other thing they're doing is they are cracking down on ghost guns, which is the really political term. It's like a assault rifle. Ghost gun is the new scary political term for 80% low receivers, and frames.
Yeah.
So they're cracking down on this. They're trying to rewrite and reestablish the definition of a firearm, which is a massive problem. And part of doing this is getting this new nominee in there to create, in their words, ensure that the ATF has the leadership it needs to enforce our common sense gun laws and fight gun crime.
Yeah, that's
so pretty sounding.
Yeah, that's you got red flags all over it, I feel.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Red flag laws are a constant thing that are happening. Yeah, so big problem. In addition to this, you have House Bill, or HR, which stands for House of Representatives, 6225 or 6225. And it's got a whole list of things that it does. So this is coming from Firearms Policy Coalition, or Gun Policy on Instagram. So this is where I'm getting this source. But HR 6225 would mandate that FFLs, so federal firearm licenses, implement costly and impractical security features. It would increase licensing fees by 100%. It would strike limits on ATF inspections and allow the ATF to facilitate the digital capture of current dealer paper records.
Yeah, and just because that's from a very Second Amendment pro page, it's pretty much exactly what Representative Kelly, who's the one who came up with this, pretty much exactly what hers said. Hers was like a little bit more worded, where it's I don't know, like written where it's actually a good thing, like, oh yeah, we got to increase security so it's, less theft. But in all reality, that just makes it harder for, FFL stores to actually be a store if they have to, spend a whole bunch of money on security and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I think if you're going to be running a gun store, you probably should have some sort of security like we do, but...
Yeah, but it shouldn't be mandated.
No, you should have to just do whatever's required by, or at least be grandfathered in or something, because, like, there's gun stores that have been running the way they've been running for years and years and years, so it doesn't make much sense. I can't get to it now for whatever reason, but...
Well, just because HR 6225 is something that is, that one's obviously kind of in place now. Let's break down kind of what it means from the perspective of a gun store. So we do have our FFL. We as a company have our federal firearms license. And just a little bit of info on kind of how it currently works, so you can already understand how strict it already is. I mean, it's already, in my opinion, very strict and overly regulated.
Yeah.
So in order to sell firearms, first of all, in the U.S., and this is a federal regulation, you have to apply and maintain a federal firearms license, which is something you apply and pay for. The cost varies. They're a couple $100 depending on what type you get. There's different types. There's, you can be a type 3, which is basically like just standard gun sales. There's a bunch. I'm not going to go through them all. It doesn't really matter. But like we're a type 7, which is a manufacturer. So we can manufacture our own firearms, but we can also sell.
Yeah.
But you have to apply for and maintain a license, which costs money, and it's a reoccurring fee. So the implementation of costly and impractical security features and the increase of licensing fees by 100%. So obviously your licenses are going to cost a lot more money, which I think is ridiculous. They're already expensive for what it is. You're literally paying for, I mean, I understand it. I understand there's like paperwork and, this stuff costs money to set up, but
once you're set up,
the reoccurring fees make no sense, especially when you get into the SOT, the special occupational tax, which is how you sell what a lot of people refer to as class 3 items. So like suppressors, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, stuff like that. Those get very expensive and those are pretty ridiculous too. Like they're very, they're kind of like tier based. So it costs this much until you make this amount of money as a business. Then you have to pay this much, so it's like all this stuff like that. It's an annual fee. So yeah, the fees are already ridiculous.
Yeah, the fees are already kind of a preventative measure to keep, less people doing it.
Right. And then,
which is dumb. I think anyone should be able to do it. Like, as long as you can pass a background check, you should be able to do it.
Yeah. And then part of getting your application approved as an FFL is you have to pass an initial inspection. The ATF actually comes to your location and inspects your premises, and there's certain things you have to have in place. Like you have to have, and I can't remember them all specifically, but you have to have a secure location to keep the firearms you're going to have on the premises. You have to separate personal firearms you have to have a system in place to separate personal firearms from, logged in firearms. You have to log any firearms you have in and out, maintain a logbook. There's all these things in place they inspect to make sure you have the capability of doing. Like they want to see, lockable doors or safes. You're not necessarily required to have a safe, but you have to have some kind of secured place to keep the firearms. But the security features on top of that, I think personally we have a lot more. We have actual safes, fire rated, very like tamper proof, good quality safes that we keep everything in, and we have security cameras and stuff like that. But this goes back to personal responsibility, which we talk about all the time. But I don't think anybody should tell you like these are things you absolutely have to have. Like, for example, in your house, you own that property, and it's on you to decide how safe you want to keep it.
Yeah.
I think it should be very much the same way. I understand, there has to be regulations for certain things, but honestly, it should be left up to the individual. Like it already requires so much. So I could see this becoming ridiculous. Like you have to have, and it's all easy to take advantage of. I could see like, oh, you need to have like I could easily see it going towards like, I'm not saying it is, but I could see it going towards, well, you have to have a live feed camera system that the ATF can check into, Yeah. Like I could see that happening, Yeah,
which is crazy.
And again, I'm not saying that that's what is happening, but that very vague, like implementation of additional security features that's in the bill that's vague, and that could become anything, Yeah, it's ridiculous. And then strike limits on ATF inspections. So you're supposed to get inspected by the ATF pretty often, but it's to a limit. They can't show up every day and just inspect you. There is a limit of how often they can do it. Technically, they can show up unannounced. Normally, if you've got a good office, they'll give you like a professional courtesy. They'll give you a little bit of advance notice and say, "Hey, just so you know, we're gonna be there tomorrow," or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's usually pretty short notice, but they normally let you know, like, "Hey, it's a professional courtesy."
For our case, yeah.
Yeah.
they're good about it. Plus, I mean, we have the benefit of living pretty far away from our agent, so he doesn't want to drive all the way down to
for us to be closed. Yeah.
So it's beneficial for us, but
right. And then, but this would remove those limits because, like I said, they can't just pester you. You know, they've implemented a limit system, so you have a little bit of, you know, realistic privacy. I mean, yeah, technically they're you know, the way it's set up now, they're technically privy to whatever records you have on site. But I mean, it's very ridiculous and impractical for them to just be able to show up whenever they want, however many times they want.
Especially for someone that's like doing more things than just selling firearms out of their business. That's where it gets like super. I mean, it's ridiculous to begin with, but I'm saying like it's super ridiculous if you do a bunch of stuff like what we do. You know, like we do holster manufacturing and you know, we do sewing and stuff like that, and for them to be able to just like come in and smash all around and do whatever they want in here whenever they want to do it, it's kind of a little bit insane to me, because we just don't sell like a ton of firearms either.
Right.
So I just find it weird. I mean, it's weird for anyone, but I'm just saying, like, especially for companies that are doing like not a ton of firearm sales to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, we have an FFL because it's convenient for us. We don't sell a ton of firearms. We don't sell them very much at all, but they're just going to be able to come in and do whatever they want. It's weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, and even if it was your primary source of business, it's like I still...
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not right regardless, but...
Yeah, and then this is the biggest one, and this is one I really wanted to focus on and kind of explain for people, but allow the ATF to facilitate the digital capture of current dealer paper records. This one is pretty frightening, and it's honestly ridiculous. So the way it currently works, if you want to buy a gun, you have to fill out a form 4473, which is the it's a firearms transaction record. So on this form, you fill out all your personal information, you say where you live, and then we as an FFL have to put the type of firearm, the manufacturer, the serial number, all that information on the paper. Now, when we make the call, unless you live in a state that requires registration, which there are states that do, ours does not, thankfully. But when we call the NICS division for the background check, the National Instant Criminal, what is it? Something. Criminal search, I think.
I'll find out.
Yeah. So it's actually ran by the FBI. So you call the FBI, the NICS division, and they run a quick background check on you to make sure you're not like a criminal or a fugitive or anything like that, which, again, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that's already...
Yeah, you were close. National Instant Criminal Background Check System.
Okay. We don't give them any of that information. They don't know. All they know is that it's either a handgun or a long gun. That's all they know. They don't find out if it's a, we don't tell them it's a Glock 19 serial number, whatever. They don't get any of that information at all. They don't even get your physical address. You tell them, they get your name, your state of residence, state of birth, and then Social Security number if you provide it. That's an optional. You can give that as an option.
Yeah.
Then there's yes and no questions, that you have to fill out when you fill out the form. Now, when that form gets filled out, that doesn't go anywhere. We have to keep that for 5 years. That's the requirement. Keep it for 5 years, and then we can get rid of it after that.
Yeah, shred it, burn it,
go
whatever
away.
you want to do.
But we don't.
I mean, you want to destroy it, obviously, but
yeah,
whatever means you destroy it with.
But yeah, you get rid of them. They go away. They get dissolved. they disappear, I guess. So, there's a lot of misconception there. People think, well, hey, I don't want them to have my serial number and all that. Well, they don't. That's not something that they currently have access to. The only time that would come into play is if like a specific gun was used in a crime and they had the serial number and they were able to figure out, which there's ways they can do it. They can kind of figure out, hey, where did this go? And then if we got like subpoenaed for certain documents, like, hey, this gun, we need to know where this gun
serial
went.
Number firearm was sold to you by this distributor or whatever.
That's why you're required to keep them for as many years as you are. It's generally in an effort to help, like if your firearm gets stolen or something, then you can use your serial number, But you are never actually attached to that gun and its serial number. With this, though, this would be, a digital capture of the 4473, which has all this information written on it.
Yeah.
Which would be a problem because then they would have your address, the type of gun you bought, the serial number. They would have all that information and they could pretty much do whatever they wanted with that information. They could build like a list, they could categorize everything together and kind of compile information.
Yeah.
And it's a complete, in my opinion, it's a complete breach of your personal privacy and your right to, tools to defend yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's, ultimately it's a step toward whatever, goal they achieved. Ultimately they got to have a list, otherwise they don't know who's got what, and right now they don't. I mean, they can figure it out, over time, but this would be a faster way for them to actually have, a growing list from if this thing gets passed from here on out, basically, if they want to proceed that way. And then I don't know if it's just for the 4473s or is it for like any kind of paperwork that you have?
It just says current dealer paper records. So I'm not sure.
Would that be logbooks as well then?
Probably. Yeah. Which, I mean, this is all an effort to digitalize everything. This is why we actually we're pretty old fashioned here. Like when we sell firearms, we don't use the electronic system.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know where that information goes. You type all the same information in on that. But supposedly it works pretty much the same and they don't get the information, but there's no way to know. Like when we do I can't remember what it's even called, but if you go to a store, for example, and you do you fill out the 4473 on one of those kiosks and it's electronic or whatever.
It's basically doing it there.
Yeah, that records that information, and then still, basically it's the same thing. And we have access to that system, but we don't use it if we can help it because.
But to say the only time we used it was when, and even then we didn't use it like hardly at all. I think we used it like a couple times.
Yeah.
When you just couldn't get a hold of anyone. There was a time frame where you would sit on hold for like 3 hours.
Yep. And
you still wouldn't get a hold of anyone. It's just like you finally gave up and hung up.
Yeah, that was back when firearm sales were up like almost 400%. So that was like at the very beginning of that was like right in 2020 when like COVID started and
yeah, so I think it's easier to get on the phone anyways. Plus it's like, I mean, there's no guarantee they're not logging the information, but I just don't feel like they are. They haven't, like the person that's behind the phone there has nothing to gain by doing that.
Well, yeah,
they're just typing it into the computer and doing a run. Like,
well, you're not giving them that information over the phone. That's the whole point.
Well, no, I'm not the serial number and stuff. I'm talking about the person's individual information.
Yeah, but all they get is their name, and that's pretty much it. They don't actually know where they live or anything. So, like, you don't give them their address over the phone. You just say, they say state of residence, and you say Alaska or whatever. So, and that's it. So, I mean, it's very minimal. But, like, if you fill out that form, that electronic form, e-file, that's what it's called. If you do the e-file, then, you know, and if it's not a big deal to you, then it's not a big deal to you. But we don't know, you know. So that's actually why we signed up for e-file, and we used it for a few people, you know. But then we looked into it and we're like, man, we just don't know. Like, where's this going? So we haven't used it
since.
Yeah. And if it's a long wait time now, they've implemented the callback feature, so you can. That's what we do. We just, if we can't get through, if they're like, your estimated wait time is 2.5 hours, then you're like, okay. When they say, would you like a call back? And you say, you know, push 1 or whatever for a call back. And that's usually what we do. Or just try it the next day. But thankfully, we don't do tons of firearm sales every day.
No.
So we do transfers and a few sales here and there, but a lot more transfers than sales, but for firearms specifically. But yeah. And I'm not saying if you're a gun store that does that, I'm not saying that you're messed up. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, do you? But the point is, you know, we just don't know where this is all going. And, you know, you can be told, oh, this is just that, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as everything's digital, it's out in the, I mean, it's available for capture. Like, there's no way around it. So yeah, them coming in here, them having the right to come in here and start taking pictures of your documents and doing that is just, or honestly, what they'd probably do is require you to fax it or something stupid like that. Like, hey, fax us all your forms, which would just be ridiculous.
I don't have a fax machine.
Yeah. Yep. That'd be hilarious. Yeah.
Come down here and get them.
I would make them come to us as much as possible. And then
I was about to say, I'd just make it as inconvenient as possible. They'd probably just give up, dude. They'd probably just be like, these guys.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of let them slide under.
No, but, you know, the whole point is, you know, this is something that we can stop now. So we do not, this HR 6225 or 6225 is definitely not something we want to let slide. So that's basically what's going on right now. We just wanted to fill everybody in on, you know, what's currently happening. Basically, anytime something comes up, we're going to get in here and do our best to explain it and break it down. And we're going to talk about, you know, how to get involved and stuff like that.
We're going to have the same podcast. We're just going to cut it out.
Edit it. Yeah.
And just put it at the end of every podcast at the end of after we explain every bill that's trying to get passed.
No.
It's like, we're not doing this again. All right. Here you guys go.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously something that I think our community's gotten better at. I think the American people are really annoyed and tired of all of the bureaucracy like that's been going on. And I feel like people are starting, especially the gun community. The gun community, I'm not going to lie, the gun community used to be, and it still is, I think it could be a lot better, but the gun community used to be absolute trash about actually being involved politically.
Well, yeah, it was like all secret and behind closed doors. And
yeah, it was like,
which I think there's some sort of privacy that's still important, but I mean, in like the political side, there's no gain by being private. Like, yeah, maybe be private about all the firearms you own, but be open about being a firearm owner.
Yeah.
Because you got to stand up for your rights. Like, otherwise, there's no one else that's going to stand up for you if you're all just being like, no, I don't want the government knowing I got guns. And if I try to defend these rights, then they're going to know. It's like, dude, they already know.
Yeah.
You better defend your rights. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Be more bold about stuff. But yeah, I think back in the day, no, but I feel like not long ago, the kind of thought process was get an NRA membership and you're doing a lot for your rights.
Yeah.
And I was there at one point.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of goes through that because that's just what you're told, or that's what we were told, you know?
Yeah, because the NRA...
That's the information you got back in the day was like, yeah, you can do the most by supporting this big company that's just making millions off of people.
Yeah.
And really not doing that much. And
in fact, actually being pretty corrupt. I mean, a lot of stuff has come out about the NRA, and that's a whole other podcast. I don't want to get into that today, but the NRA, if you support the NRA or if you have supported the NRA, I'm not going to condemn you because I'm a lifetime member. Because a long time ago, I drank the Kool-Aid and I bought a lifetime membership, which was like $1,000 or whatever it was back then. And, that's what happened. And now I'm technically a lifetime member, but I'm very disappointed with how the NRA's treated things. And it's basically just been a big money grab. And they've gotten too political. They use what is an inalienable right, and a right that is defined, or I shouldn't say defined. It's a right that is protected in our Constitution. And they're using parts of that just straight up inalienable right to barter for, using air quotes, the bigger picture, or the overall good are things that you see like, well, we're going to compromise here. No, there's no compromise. This is we never compromise on this.
Yeah. And it's ultimately just an attempt for power, like that's the only thing that there is to gain by taking it away. Like our countries ran forever, not forever, but I mean, for a long time now, on the fact that people have had firearms, people have owned firearms and been able to defend themselves with it. And it's just that's how we've been. And for us to just all of a sudden change that is crazy to me. It's like, oh, well, it's different times. And it's like, no, it is different times, but still the same, there's still the same corrupt people in power that want to like ultimately take over.
Right.
And I don't know. That might sound crazy, but I'm just saying, like, that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah. And you can't be blind to that. But yeah, so I mean, the NRA is, they've used a lot of language over the years to try to like be sensitive and careful about what, how they word things. And that's caused a lot of damage, I think, to the overall value and actual reason that the, Second Amendment is in place. They've tried to make it about like subsistence living and hunting and, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that they've done. And like I said, that's a podcast for a different time. But my point is that was kind of where I think the gun industry used to be. And to some extent it is, and if you're listening to this and you're like, well, what the heck? I didn't know about this. Like I pay the NRA every month or whatever. It's like, dude, sweet. But like, start looking into it and see where your money's going, and you get those mass emails that are like, I don't know, they love to send those emails out there to like, this is what we're doing now. And it's always like, okay, read through that stuff and actually start to kind of look at it and realize that it's kind of just a big political game, just like everything else.
Yeah. There's pretty much politics and everything once you get to that.
Yeah.
That size of an organization, I feel like it unfortunately happens to like most businesses.
Yeah, and you hear people say, well, that's how you play the game, and it's like, yeah, but we're not playing a game here. This is shall not be infringed. That is the clearest language you could have. Shall not be infringed. Like this is not, we can't do anything to this. This is the way that it is. There's no, well, we can maybe get rid of trigger groups and, no, like that. Well, we're doing this so you can keep your ARs. And it's like, no, stop. Like there is no, we cannot go down that because you never get that stuff back.
No.
I mean,
it's always take, and never,
yep.
You never getting it back. I mean, some of the stuff over time we have gotten stuff back in the past, but like the assault rifle ban.
Yeah.
We ended up getting that
thankfully.
Back. Yeah, thank goodness. Could you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, like basically what it was in the 90s where you had SKSs and Mini 14s, and that was like the most modern platform you could own, Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
So thank goodness we got it back. But you see it all the time, and you see it at the state level a lot. And that's why you need to be involved at your state level, because ultimately it's kind of like the whole concept of like clean your room before you try to fix the world.
Yeah.
Like if you have a dirty room and you can't, I think it's like Jordan Peterson, I think, is kind of subscribes to that mentality a lot. It's like you need to fix, I can't remember the exact terminology he uses, but basically he's saying if you've got like, if your own life is in disarray, you know, you need to stop and focus there, because how are you going to fix the world if you can't even fix your own life?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to like look at some big thing that you can't actually do anything with and be like, we need to fix this. This is, yeah, and like say a bunch of stuff, but actions speak louder than words. So if you're just sitting there saying a bunch of stuff, oh yeah, I believe in, you know, we need to make the world green. And then meanwhile, you're, you know, living your own life just like everybody else,
yeah.
you know, or whatever it is.
Your own private jet and you're like,
yeah. So, you know, and I think that's very true. I think, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just laziness, really.
Yeah. And ultimately, we're kind of beating a dead horse on it, but, yeah. So ways that we can kind of help.
Yeah.
Like, what's the best? What do you think's the best way to kind of actually start with?
Well, I mean, first, I kind of want to explain how the system actually works.
Okay.
Yeah. So, basically, if you have a bill, let's say you've got a bill that, which a bill, by the way, is usually introduced by a representative. So, first you have the general idea, whatever it is. So it could be, and that's the thing, is that a bill can come from you.
Yeah.
Like you as a citizen, if you have like an idea, you can approach a representative, like a House representative at the state level. And if that representative gets on board with your idea, then they do what's called sponsoring the bill. So that's how it starts. So you have a representative that sponsors the bill, and then basically the bill goes to kind of a study group, which they call committees. And once it's there, they kind of figure out, you know, what's it going to cost? They figure out, like, what are the logistics behind it? Is this practical? Or, you know, is this bill like we should make a subsection of Kenai on the moon? Is it just ridiculous and impractical? Or is it something that we can actually do, you know? So that's kind of like where they look at that. But yeah, if you get an actual representative to sponsor it, they're not dumb. Yeah, well, I use that loosely. There are some dumb representatives out there, but they're not gonna sponsor something that they don't believe in.
It's just gonna get tossed out.
Yeah. So, but you need to do your due diligence, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But if you are trying to get some kind of bill into the legislative system, then you know, you need to do your due diligence and make sure it's something that makes sense and it's well written.
Do research, make sure that it actually makes sense and that it's cost effective, and obviously have a good selling pitch when you go talk to the guy or girl. Because otherwise you're not going to get anyone on board if you just go in like lazily about it. But
so once it goes to the committee, if it passes the committee, they basically decide, all right, so this is something that we're going to vote on. And then there's timelines involved and stuff like that. And then, and by the way, this is information that I got from house.gov. So this is the actual United States House of Representatives legislative process. So if you wanted to check it out for yourself, I mean, I'm kind of just going off of my own paraphrased understanding of it, but that's what I'm referencing. So if you want to read the step-by-step process, I recommend doing it, because we should all understand this. This is how our country works. And just like we have to know how to pay taxes, just like we have to, you know, understand what kind of money we should be making, all the things that are involved with being an American and being involved in this country. This is just one of those things. Yeah. So, you know, you have to know what laws are bad and all that. Well, you need to know what this process is. So look it up, house.gov. Anyways, so once it passes committee, then it goes and gets voted on. So if it wins from a majority, then it moves to the Senate. So, and that's where the Senate is going to decide, you know, basically it goes through another committee, like goes through multiple committee processes, but the Senate ends up voting on it. And if the majority passes it, then it comes back and they kind of start, that's where they start to work out the nitty gritty of the bill or the law, you know?
Yeah.
So they kind of, and it kind of sucks because that's where it can get watered down, because that's where you're going to get a lot of the bipartisan kind of stuff where it's like, well, you know, yeah, it passed, but like we need, and that's also through that process, there's a lot of little like deals that are made, you know, and they, a lot of times behind closed doors, which is messed up. I personally believe this should all be, anything involved with any policy or legislation that's going on should be public information. It should be viewed. It should be like recorded. You should be able to tune in and watch it, I believe.
Yeah.
But there's little like, hey, check it out. I'll vote yes on this, but you got to do this in the bill, you know, and that's where you start having like weird stuff that gets added. Like there's, you know, if you've ever actually read a bill and you go down to like towards the bottom and you start reading like, what the heck does this stuff have to do with anything? A lot of that is like, well, you know, yeah, I'll play ball with you on this bill, but you know, I need you to have some funding for the whatever kind of added into it too, and like, there's like all this crazy weird stuff that happens. So, but understand that so you can stay on it. But anyways, just the raw process. So the Senate votes on it, goes back to the House and the Senate, and then basically they approve it, and then the bill basically gets what they call enrolled. So, and then that's where the president has a chance to veto it or sign it. So the president actually says, all right, cool. Well, the president can also veto the bill, which means that it's struck down pretty much. And then they have to kind of restart the process all over again, which the veto process is kind of crazy. And that's at the federal level. So that's federal. But this thing, the same process generally, for the most part, happens at the state level, and the president's basically replaced with the governor. So that's why it's so important to get involved, because you can actually be a part of this process. And I highly recommend, it's kind of funny, Steven and I have been wanting to do this topic for a while, and then recently, like a few days ago, TrexArms, which if you're not familiar with them, look them up. Very successful, you know, multi-million-dollar company. They kind of work in the same, I mean, they're kind of our competition in a way, but they're a big player. We're a small fish in their sea, but they make holsters, do training, you know, do like, they're kind of, I feel like we have similar ideas to them. Like we're all about like influencing education.
Yeah, I'd say as far as like companies out there, they're probably one of the closest to how we conduct ourselves as a business. I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, there's pretty major differences, but
no, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we're like copy stamp, but I'm just saying like there's not very many companies doing holsters, selling gear, good gear, doing training. I mean, they focus on different things, and I don't know if they're an FFL. I don't think they're an FFL. So there's.
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, but anyways, they're very successful though. Very successful business. They've done great things, and honestly, I think they're one of the biggest. And they've come up a couple times in our podcast, but it's because they're really making influences. I think they're doing a lot to change how things are, how people think about things. You got to hand it to them. Their level of influence is pretty high. But they just released a video on YouTube about the legislative process and how they've been actually involved and instrumental in the passing of a few bills. And I highly encourage you, I'll put the link in the description probably, but I highly encourage you to watch this video. It's funny because it's done by, who is it? Is it Isaac? Isaac Bodkin, I think. Yeah, Isaac. And he does a really good job at breaking everything down. But he says at one point in the video, and it made me look, and I was like, dang, that's really sad. At one point in the video, he says, we're doing another one of these videos, because they've done them before in the past, They've done one similar to this in the past, and he said, and it's not going to get very many views, but we're going to do it anyways. Or I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah,
it says something along those lines.
When he's walking up the stairs, it's pretty early on. He's like, yeah, this doesn't get as many views as our normal videos do. But
yeah. So I looked. I was like, I'm curious about that. And at the time I watched it, I think it had like 30-something thousand views, which seems like a lot. That'd be a lot for one of our videos.
Yeah.
But in contrast, they have some videos that have hundreds of thousands, and in some cases, millions of views. And they're the more kind of gun-related cool guy videos. And I get that, but the contrast was so vast. And, you know, I can only imagine that their click away is massive. Like, if you have YouTube, you can go in the analytics, and you can look at, you can basically go into individual videos and look at when people click out of the video and stop watching it. And it tells you like when and where. I guarantee you that and it'll tell you what's the average percentage of the video that gets watched. I guarantee you it's low, and I guarantee you the click away is huge.
yeah,
So of those, and I don't know where it is now. It's probably I'd have to check.
30,000.
Yeah, of the 30,000-ish that watched it when I watched it, I guarantee you not even all those people
Watch it
all the way through. So, and it's really sad. It needs to change. This is something that the point I'm building up to is that if you value this stuff, go watch this video, because they do a really good job at breaking down the process. Yes, it's in Tennessee, which is where they're located, but this is how it works in the majority of states. It's very similar to how it works.
Yeah.
There's a few differences, like when they get to like how they're,
Yeah, it's kind of nice because it's like it gives you almost like you know, you got almost like that nervous feeling on your first day of work or whatever it may be, like your first time doing something. And if you could do that for everything you did for the first time, you got to watch a video of someone that do it like somewhat close. Like it doesn't even have to be the exact same, but if you could do that, it kind of like takes like that nervousness out of it. Like if I felt like after watching that video, if I wanted to go, if me and you decided, hey, we want this bill to get passed in Alaska, after watching that video, I feel like, oh yeah, it actually doesn't seem that like intimidating. Like, yeah, it's a little bit like obviously you need to do your work. It shouldn't be something you go into like lazy and you didn't put much effort into it. Like obviously, if you want it to actually pass, you're going to put lots of effort into it. But it doesn't seem like out of the realm after, you know, seeing it. Which I mean, before I wouldn't have worried to do it either. But I'm just saying, after watching it, it's like, oh, that's actually way easier than I would expect. You know,
right?
Which is cool.
It's attainable. It makes it attainable. You're like, man, this is something that, you know, I mean, obviously, this is stuff that behind the scenes, kind of, we've always been kind of trying to work on certain things that we think would be good for our state, and there's, you know, things that we want to do in the future as we start to kind of build relationships with people. But yeah, exactly. If you're not sure how this works, they do a really good job at breaking it down. And the only thing I think that specifically Tennessee is like when they get to how they pass or they move bills along to the next kind of phase, you know, they do the way it's voted on and different things like that's not necessarily the same in every state, but it also shows, it sheds a light on how kind of sneaky and shady things can be and how, you know, shielded they try to be from being held responsible. Like, and I don't know if it's like this in all states, but in Tennessee, they can just do a vocal voting on things where they just go, you know, like basically it would be like, you know, those in favor say aye. It's just like, aye. And then those in favor say no. And it's like, oh, that one's louder, so it failed. It's like, what? You know? It's
so old
the
school.
Craziest thing ever.
Just the old
it's
church
like British,
voting, dude.
It's like British Parliament style, you know?
Yeah.
And those against, you know, it's like, what in the world is going on here? How does that even ever work?
You just bring someone really loud.
Yeah,
That's like,
everybody put on your big boy pants. Let's yell really loud at when they say yes or no or whatever. Crazy. That's what I would actually love to be in there, because I just put on that drill sergeant voice, dude. Oh, just it's so ridiculously loud. All the representatives are like, oh my goodness, it's that guy again. Oh man.
He's back.
Ah, man. So, but yeah, just little things like that. So definitely go watch that. It is long. It's, you'll be there for 20 plus minutes, but it's worth it. And that's not a lot of time. That's the thing too. I get so frustrated with people saying, I just don't have time. It's like, yeah, you do. If you can make time for all the other weird crap that you do, you can make time to sit there and watch
all the other weird crap.
See, I'm telling you, man, people, I don't have time. And it's like, what do you mean? Well, I get up, I go straight. It's like, okay, so you wake up, you're immediately at work, and you're just working, and then you just immediately go to sleep as soon as work's over? No.
I mean, some people do that, but...
No, they don't, though. You wake up, you waddle around, and you get your quick little breakfast, and you have to drive to work, and then you go to work, and...
Dude, there was time periods where I felt like that's all I was doing, but...
Yeah, no, but there's... the point is there's always time. You know?
Eventually it's going to let up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, obviously you have some time.
That's true. I mean, you can always break things up. Anyways, the point is, do some research. That's a good way. It's a good, easy, palatable way to kind of absorb how this process works. So I highly recommend it. But I also recommend watching that video will not make you an expert. You need to go in and read. Go to house.gov, look up legislative process, and read it. You know what? I'll link it. I'll make it extra easy. In the bottom of the description, I'm going to put this in there so you understand it. And it's there. And you can just go, boop, and then you can go to it and then click away because you get bored and you lose your... No, just kidding. And I'm not pointing fingers. I do the same stuff. I have a short attention span, as you can tell by my rambling. I just jump from topic to topic. But this stuff's important, and I'm very passionate about it, and it's something that I get frustrated about easily because it's so overlooked, and it's so just like, it's for years people have just been like, well, I voted, time to just ignore everything and go back to the way things are, and just it's like, it just makes me,
I did my part.
Yeah,
it's like, but you can still continue to do your part by paying attention.
Yeah.
I mean, you live in this... We all live here in America. Well, not all of us that are listening to this, but if you live in America, you're blessed. Just know that. But also, like, if you do live here, we have a very unique system, and we should be all taking advantage of that fact. Like we have the ability to actually have a voice in how things go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just simply voting is like ordering food on a menu, and then when it arrives, you just leave the restaurant. It's like, this is what I want. Okay, we'll get that for you. Okay, you got it. Here it is. Thank you. Like, well, hold on a second. You got to pay for that. Like, one, you got to pay for it. Two, are you going to eat it? Are you going to, like, join in with the thing that you picked? Are you going to, like, make sure that it tastes good?
Yeah.
You know, are you going to make sure it was cooked properly?
Well, I don't know. Some people are just not going to actually do anything if it doesn't taste good.
Well, yeah, but what do you do when something isn't up to standard at a restaurant?
You don't tip well.
Or you say, hey, something's wrong here, you know?
Which kind of sucks for that's a difference.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
It's
but
like the waitress or the waiter just gets screwed for the chef's shortcomings.
You take action. That's the whole point. You know, no one orders food and just literally just pieces out. Nice. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. If you just vote and you just deuces and go about your business, like, no, there's a responsibility here. There's an involvement here, and it's not wished upon. It's expected. There's an expected involvement, you know?
Yeah.
So,
especially from the state level, I feel like that's like even more.
Well, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but it's like more achievable. For sure.
But that's something else people don't realize is that focusing on the state level, one, it affects the bills and laws that get built within your state that directly affect your like lifestyle and well-being. But two, those people you vote for in your state then go into Congress and the Senate to represent you in your state.
Yeah.
And they represent you and your ideas. And, you know, if you're sitting here thinking, well, the person I wanted didn't get voted for, too bad. They still represent you. You didn't personally vote for them. You had a different candidate in mind, but that person that's in office is representing the place you live and representing you as a constituent. So that is your representative. That is your senator. And so you need to begin a dialogue with them and make things start happening and start talking to them. So backing up a little bit, I kind of want to break this whole thing down about what you can do. So firstly, you need to understand the process. So we talked about that. Then you need to research. You need to do your research. When people are running for election or running for a position in your state, you need to do research on that person. And that research includes talking to them. You can reach out to people. Like when people are running, you can reach out. You can email their office. Their usually they have like a campaign office of some kind, like an administrative place that you can ask questions to. A lot of them put like their main policies on their campaign website, or portal or whatever. And you need to do your homework. You need to go in there. You need to not. And I've been guilty of it. When I was younger, I would like show up to the voting booth and I would be like, "Who are all these judges?" And I would just randomly or I would just not vote. When I was a lot younger. And I regret that a lot because those judges are so important. So leading up to the election, these are people that have been running for a long time or have been put up for nomination for a long period of time. You need to have a good understanding. And if you need to go in with a list, then go in with a list. Have people written down and understand why you want to vote for them. And if there's somebody that, if somebody's on there that doesn't really represent you either way, then you need to either make an educated decision on who best fits it. It's never going to be perfect. I think that's the other thing too, is people think like, people just give up on the system because they're like, nah, there's nobody in there that represents what I believe. So why would I get involved? And it's like, no, there is though. Like there is a better candidate.
I would say there's always someone that's going to be better than the other.
Yeah. And if, I'm not going to say anything specific, but if you find value in something, this one singular thing, and that is like to you the most important thing, like just for explanation purposes or example purposes, I'll say, let's say for me it's firearm rights. It's not only that. I mean, I care about a lot of other things, and actually I have some things that are even above that. But let's say it is. Let's say I solely base my voting decision on who's going to protect firearms, and there's not really a clear candidate there. Yeah. Well, you need to start looking at other things because there's other things you believe in. No one just believes in one singular thing, and if you do, you really need to like open your mind and be a little more reasonable. But you have to start looking at, okay, I'm this isn't going to be great for this one thing. Neither of them seem to be very set or confirmed on what they're going to do here, but what are the other things? And you need to be critical about your beliefs as a whole. And this goes back to like you having a good sense of beliefs and a good personal constitution, like things you believe in as a person, what you want to stand for, what you value. This goes back to, we talk about like faith, having faith and having a good moral structure is important. And this is a huge reason why, because you have to be responsible for what you believe in and who you're going to pick to represent those beliefs. So that one right there might be the worst, the part that we're worst at as a society is actually doing the footwork to figure out who will best represent you.
Yeah. It's because that takes work in itself. So
yeah.
And ultimately, I think what all this stuff boils down to is laziness for the most part. Like, we're busy. Americans have basically created, which, I mean, I fall into this terribly. I'm basically a workaholic, but, yeah, we love to work. Like, that's all it is. And what little time we do have off with our families and friends and things like that, were like, well, I'm not doing anything like that during that time frame, which I think that's like the leading cause for a lot of this stuff, like just kind of going unanswered. But in my opinion, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's tough, and it's hard to, and I understand that.
And I'm not saying that's an excuse. I'm just saying that's the reason why it happens.
Yeah. No, I know. But I mean, it is kind of an excuse, but it's, I guess I would say it is an excuse, but it's not a valid excuse.
Yeah.
Like, it's one that you need, like, yes, people have that excuse. I mean, I have that excuse too, but you need to look at yourself and be like, yeah, but this is something I need to make time for,
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately it affects your day to day, especially the local stuff. The local stuff really does. Does the president really affect your day to day? He or she can, but ultimately it's the,
It's from the
your
state level,
district's
yeah, because
representative.
even federal things can get passed and your state can say, no, we're not doing that as a state.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Oh yeah.
So if you have a good, if you put people in your state in power that need to be there or should be there over someone else, then you potentially dodge a whole lot of bull crap that happens at the federal level. You at least have a chance, so.
Yeah.
Or it just gets shut down because you put the right people in to actually vote on whatever bills are getting passed. So.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, with all that being said, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, though, just voting is not going to be enough. And that's kind of what this has all been leading up to. And basically already said it, but when you show up on...
Well, and also, like, at least vote, too. Like, I know voting's not going to be enough, but some people don't vote at the state level.
Oh, yeah.
Some people only vote on the president. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like...
those
figure out who, like, ultimately you got to figure out who you want to vote for. Do good research on what their beliefs are. Go out and actually vote on them. Like, make time for it. Whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
And then after that, once whoever gets in office, maybe it's not who you voted for, like what we talked about earlier, but then you got to constantly be on them, Yeah. You got to ride them.
Yep. For sure. No, I mean... Yeah, I mean, exactly. You conversations with them and regular kind of outreach to that person should become habitual. It should become something that you just do. It needs to become part of our kind of daily life because they work for us. That's something that a lot of people forget.
Yeah,
we don't work for them. We're not here to please our representatives and our senators. No, we voted for you. You work for the people, and we, the people, have some concerns, and here they are, and that's something that should be regularly happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Steven said, you need to vote. You need to actually vote. I get so frustrated with how many times we have people come in here and like, yeah, I haven't voted in years because it's all corrupt, and it's like, sick, dude. So you aren't participating at all then.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, am I going to sit up here and say there's no corruption? No, there's definitely some corruption. There's maybe not just some. It's probably a lot more than we all even realize. But we have to work with the system we have.
You can't complain if you're not actually doing your part to begin with. Like,
yeah.
Like, you literally can't. You have no dog in the fight, so it's like, dude, you didn't even attempt.
And do something about it.
So what are you going to complain about?
Yeah.
You can't complain. Because you're trash and you didn't do anything.
Yeah. And you're the person that waited until the last minute and you looked at all the candidates on the list and you go, yeah, you look at all the candidates, you look at all the candidates on the list and you're like, well, it's corrupt. I'm not going to vote. It's like, you should have been involved earlier on when these guys and gals that were running that are saying like, they're very clearly running against corruption. And, there's people that run on that all the time. They're like, and I think some of them are legitimately trying to do well. It's usually at the smaller level.
Yeah.
but people that go into it and they get shut down. But that same person that says they never vote for anyone because it's corrupt was not in there trying to support that candidate in the first place.
Yeah.
To trying to make an actual difference.
Yeah, to actually get them to the point where they're getting voted for, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, going back to what you said, you need to vote. And not only do you need to vote, you need to vote at the smallest level. Like, you need to be voting for people on your city council. You need to be voting for the people in your county, like county sheriffs and stuff like that. They have a ton of authority.
Yeah.
These are people you need to be voting for. And that stuff directly affects, that goes up the hill, so to speak, it goes up the chain of command and eventually does affect federal stuff.
Yeah, because usually those people don't just stop at the position they're in. Like, if they get the opportunity to go higher, they will. So if you've pushed someone to the starting point and they got a lot of people behind them, then usually they're like, you know what, I'm going to keep going because I think I can make a bigger difference if I go higher. So, like, the most people that get into politics, I would never want it. Like, me personally, I would not be good at it. So I'm like, no, I'm good. Which might mean that I'm good at it. I don't know. But most people that get into it actually have, like, the right mindset. Or not, I'm not going to say most people, but I'm saying, like, the smaller level guys who want to go into it and want to, knock out the corruption and stuff like that, they usually have a good head on their shoulders. They're pretty solid people.
Right.
Sometimes they just don't have the backing, to actually climb up the ranks.
Yep.
So, and ultimately, you're not going to be able to read the person's mind and actually figure out what their true intentions are. But, I mean, if you sit down and meet with them and talk to them and email them or whatever you need to do, talk with them on the phone, then you're going to get a better understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah. Way better than if you just
blindly vote.
Look at their name and you're like, who is that again? And you're trying to, like, Google it in the voting booth randomly. Like, like, what the heck? So, yeah. So, I mean, voting, it's not just about voting. It's about talking to these people, building relationships with them. And then, like you said, you kind of already mentioned it, and then holding them accountable. So if they do something that you didn't agree with, or if they're saying they're going to do something that you don't agree with, then reaching out to them and be like, no, like, this doesn't represent me. Yeah. So, yeah, it's such a, and I don't want to sound like I'm up here, like, preaching down at you, because this is something I just started doing, like, a few years ago.
Yeah, I haven't been doing it long either.
And it's something that,
like, pretty much ever since I got out of the military, because I didn't vote really when I was in the military.
Dude, I didn't either. And how dumb were we?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, I'm in the military, and when you're young and you're naive, you're young, you're naive. I
didn't know how it worked either, because I was in a different state, but I was still an Alaska resident. And I was like, I don't know how I...
Yeah, it's confusing.
A little bit...
I didn't even think about that.
It's a little bit confusing. So it's like, there was a lot of stuff. I also didn't collect my PFD because of that reason, which I totally could have the whole time.
Yeah. Dude, you might be able to file for back pay.
No, I think I tried already.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably too long. Too long ago. That'd be sick, though.
That would be. It'd been like 4 checks of back pay.
Usually they're pretty lenient with, like, veterans and stuff.
Yeah, I think when I looked into it when I got out, because I was like, wait, I've been able to get this whole time, and they were like, someone was like, yeah, you should have been. You were a
Alaska resident
the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, huh, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've, like, never been super attached to money, so I'm kind of just like, whatever.
Yeah. I was going to say, they're usually pretty lenient with veterans, though, because, like, when I went to Afghanistan, I forgot to file while I was there because just not thinking about it at all,
Yeah.
And then the next year, I didn't get it, and I was like, oh, yeah. And then so I emailed them, and they were like, oh, yeah, you'll get it. And I got it, like, a few weeks later. So,
okay.
But it was pretty quick. I mean, it was literally, like, right when it got sent out, my wife got it, but I didn't. And I was like, I want the dividend,
Yeah.
But
I think it was like a 2-year.
Probably.
Like you couldn't try to back pay it past like 2 full years or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, so I don't remember where we were.
Oh, we were talking about voting, like being young in the military, just not voting.
Oh yeah. So again, if you are listening to this and you're younger, you're in your early 20s or even younger, if you're 18, you just became an adult, like as an old salt. No, but as someone that's been there and is looking back with some regrets, I highly recommend you get involved and start understanding this process right now. Especially if you're even younger. I'm not sure I haven't looked at the age analytics on our audience, but or if you have a lot of younger people around you that look up to you and listen to you, like try to inspire them to get involved in this process now. I mean, as soon as you're 18, you're ready to vote. And
yeah,
man, like the kind of stuff that gets valued for voting and the priorities are so, kind of weird at that age, and it's understandable. You don't know anything about the world yet, and again, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but you just don't. Like I look back at myself and I thought I had it all figured out. Not even close. I mean, no, and there's so many things you learn.
We're gonna get 5-10 years down the road, we'll be looking back at us now and we're gonna be like, yeah, we were.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just how it goes.
That's how experience works. You gain experience and knowledge and wisdom as you get older and as you add on years. I mean, I will say, though, that I guarantee you when I'm 50 and I look back at me now being in my 30s, I'm going to be like, well, that guy had it a little more figured out than when he was 18.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I would say, and I'm not in my 50s, so I don't know, but I would imagine that the margin of, or I guess the how would I say this? The adding of knowledge and experience that happens between your like 18 when you're 18, 19-year-old, like young, you're like
just graduated to when you're
just graduated to when you're like when you reach 30. That period of time, I would say, is probably your biggest life learning stuff in general.
Yeah, I would say for the average male, yes.
Yeah. And then,
actually probably for everyone, male and female, just because you've probably taken on a bunch of experiences that you haven't done yet.
Yeah, and you've probably done a bunch of different careers and stuff.
Yeah, you've done a couple of different careers. You've had to do rent and mortgages and got married potentially and
maybe
had
got
kids.
Divorced.
Yeah, it's like you've kind of experienced a whole bunch in a 10-year span.
Yeah, and that doesn't apply to everyone, but I'm saying that period of time is important. So the sooner you can start, especially because you're still developing. I mean, the male brain develops until 25, I think.
25 to 30, I think, is what I've heard.
But so the sooner you can start to implement.
I think mine was developed at 20. I'm serious, man.
You just don't learn anything, and that doesn't mean you don't learn anything anymore. Obviously.
Well, I'm just saying, like I was just pretty calm, cool, and collective for a young guy. Yeah. I don't know. I look back on it, I was an idiot too, so there's that. So probably 25.
I was gonna say you went through your hothead phase, dude.
Yeah, that was
around that age.
I think that was just military, man.
Yeah, probably. But oh man, I've got some stories. But anyways. Steven just flipping out.
Yeah, I had
people
temper,
are being
man.
like, "Oh, this got real fast."
I don't know why. I think I've lost that now.
Yeah,
I tell people that now that I work with, like now that I have because no one saw me as a young guy.
Yeah,
but I tell people that and I'm like, yeah, man, I've changed a ton. But I mean, like I had to work on that,
right?
Because I don't know, but no one believes me. Like, dude.
Like people that knew you as a kid?
No. I'm saying people that know me now. Like they've met me recently, like within the last couple years.
And know your temperament now.
Yeah.
They don't know that you...
They were like, no, you weren't like that.
Oh.
I'm like, all right, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Steven could get fired up. So, and I didn't even see much of it because I'm sure a lot of that was, you know, that's the military, man. What's it like?
Brings out the darkness.
It feeds that because it's that like, warrior kind of mentality. But
the Sith Lords.
Yes. Feel your anger. Yeah, dude. That's good, dude. That's good stuff. No, just kidding.
Dude, somehow in the Minuteman Initiative, they're finding out that you can do impersonations way more than they did in DDS Unscripted, I feel like.
I don't know if I'm doing any impersonations. I think I'm just limping by, dude.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you've done more in this podcast than you ever did. And
dude, it's more loose and fancy free, dude. I don't care.
No, I know. You shouldn't.
Honestly, I forget we're talking into microphones half the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah. You could probably tell because I start bangoing my mic around and Steven gives me the look like, what are you doing? Why are you
Well, you're just moving around.
Mic?
I feel like you've been inspired by like Chris D'Elia or something after we watched all those videos.
Dude, he does move around a lot. Oh man.
He moves that mic around like crazy. I'm like mind blown that it doesn't pick up any of the noise. It's so quiet when he does it. It's probably just good mics, but
yeah, no, for sure. They definitely are. They got those good mics. We're gonna upgrade at some point. So
yeah, hopefully sooner than.
Honestly, though, I mean, our mics sound pretty good. Yeah. I think we got a pretty good sound. Let us know if we suck. No, I'm just kidding, dude. Where are we going? We're going off the rails right now.
It's okay.
Good. Anyways, getting back into the boring stuff. No.
Oh, no. And there goes our entire.
Yeah, you've lost all credibility. No, but I mean, it can be boring. But for me, like something that helped me a lot, going back to talking about, you know, I'm not here to like judge you and point my finger at you. This is something that when the more you learn about it, the more you'll care about it. And the more your eyes will be open to like, what? Like, man, I could have been this involved. Because I just don't think people realize, you know. And that's kind of what it is. It's like I've built kind of a passion for it. Like now it's like when stuff happens, I get frustrated and like in a good way. It's not like I'm just like throwing a big fit, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, if that's what you got to do, then do it, man. Let it out and then get cool, calm, and collected and make a difference. But no, but you know, it's like I'm like, man, like this, are you serious? Like this is happening? Or like I'll see something pass in a state where I'm like, how did that pass there? And you realize it's just complacency. It's
people not paying attention. They sneak a lot of things under the radar too. Like you got to really actually kind of put some effort in to kind of keep track of everything that's happening. Like I'm sure there's stuff happening right now that we don't even know that's happening and we are trying to actively keep up with it. So
it's hard. But it's easier than it ever has been.
They do that by design. So
right. That's like earlier when I was talking about read the bottom of those bills and read all the amendments and like the exceptions and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
you'll start seeing some weird stuff in there. Like read these bills and they are written very vague and they love to play that, you know, that legal wording game where it's kind of left open to interpretation a little bit, which is a bummer. And that's like been a tactic for a long time. But you need to read it and try to understand it. Try your best. Ask people, you know, talk about it with friends. Like, we have like a group chat with, you know, people that we all trust and stuff. And, you know, we talk to them a lot. And it's nice because we go over things in there, you know, all kinds of stuff, but political stuff will come up. And it's kind of cool because you get like it just happened the other day. Someone will bring something up, like, what do you guys think about this? And we're like, yeah, this is what we think. And then, you know, there's several people in there. So we get kind of a conversation going, and it's all people that we all trust each other, you know, and we all value each other's opinions. We all
like
value each other's funyuns. That's a stanky funyun. No, but we value each other's opinions, and we're all friends. So we respect each other's opinions too. So we want to hear what each other thinks. So if you have that, start to implement that with your group. Everyone has their like inner circle, and I do the same thing with my wife. Like my wife and I talk about this stuff, and we have conversations. She's like, "Well, what's going on?" Like she'll usually hear me, like I'll be talking to Steven or something, like we'll just be having a conversation back and forth. We need to go on a podcast, and like that's kind of what was happening a few days ago, and she's like, "What's going on?" And I was, so then we'll start kind of talking about it. And she's like, "Oh yeah, so what do you think about this?" And I'm like, "This." And she's like, "Well, what about this?" And we just have like a dialogue.
Yeah,
and I think we've been our society is kind of conditioned everybody to think that that's a bad thing, especially recently.
I don't want to talk politics.
Yeah, I'll just end up getting in a fight.
We don't have politics at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Like I remember our grandma said that one time. We were at Thanksgiving. It's like, we don't talk politics here.
Yeah, no politics around
like,
the family table.
We're still going to do it.
Yeah, and
that's me and Jacob's personality, though, just to kind of like try to rub people wrong a little bit.
So anyways, what do you guys think about that? No, but yeah, I mean, it's been, and like, that's a big thing on social media. Like, oh, don't you dare bring up politics, because then you're just a racist all of a sudden as soon as you bring up politics, depending on kind of what you say. And that's dangerous. Like, we as a people should be talking about politics. We should be talking about what's going on.
Yeah, that's just like
that's how
it's like a fear tactic, I think.
That's how weird people get into power.
Oh yeah.
When you start, because in the vacuum of that reluctance to talk about things and have dialogue and discuss things, fanatical ideas crop up and spread.
Mm-hmm.
Because something fills that void, something fills that vacuum. So that's how that works, and that's how you get this weird stuff that you're like, why is that? When you look at stuff nowadays, and you're like, how is this why is this a priority?
Yeah.
What's going on? Like, are we not paying attention to this stuff over here? Why not? Why are we focused on, I don't know. Like, why are we focused on people's genders right now when there's people being slaughtered over here because of, in Ukraine or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because regular common sense people are reluctant to bring this stuff up because it's exhausting and it takes effort. And I understand that, but it's just like all this stuff. I mean, this stuff's our responsibility. It's just, there's no other way around it.
And just like you said before, like when you started the podcast, like if you're not willing to make the fight here, you're not going to be willing to make the fight later. Like you're like, oh, well, I'm ready. Come and take it. It's like, dude, if you're not even willing to, like, if you're too lazy to go in and email, dude, if you're too lazy to take 10 minutes out of your day to email someone saying you don't agree with this, you're not going to fight. Like, I almost guarantee you that. And I know that's going to piss people off, and they're going to be like, oh, you don't know me. Oh, yeah, all right. Well, prove me wrong, I guess.
Yeah. Well, why are you not already fighting?
And that's another thing. Like, the original Minutemen, they were very involved in politics. Like, that's... Yeah. Those people came here because of all our freedoms, so they were like, yeah, we want to continue this. We want to keep this... We want to keep the good thing going.
And that's the thing, is that it was all in an effort to protect what they had attained,
Yeah, and defended and everything.
So that's right now. Like right now, there's a process and a system in place to start defending and fighting for what you believe is right and for our freedoms. So you are setting yourself up for failure and setting this country up for failure by not doing things now.
Yeah.
And sure, you could surprise us all and be a guy that's like, yeah, I don't have time for that. I'm more of an actions guy, and blah, 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 and then be the dude that's running around defending your community. But if you aren't willing to use your voice to protect our rights and to stand up for what you believe in now, then you're not an action. You're not a person of action.
Yeah, because that's part of action. Yeah, it might be more passive action, but it's still action nonetheless. Like,
I don't even know
why
if it's
would you
passive.
wait? Why would you wait for it to get worse to make it better?
And you shouldn't want it to get worse.
No, you shouldn't, because you're gonna have people. It's not gonna be fun. Like, it's not gonna be an enjoyable thing. Like, some people think it's like some awesome. It's gonna be like, oh yeah, man, I can't wait. It's like, what? Who are you?
Stop watching weird movies.
Yeah,
and get over yourself. War, you hear it all the time. War is hell, and I do not want that here, where my kids live.
I don't either.
And that's where it heads. If you know, and I think people roll their eyes at that. They're like, "Well, you know, we're not heading to war." No, it's inevitable. Look at history. Things get chipped away and chipped away and chipped away, and things start to change. And things, you know, before you know it, you're either at war or you're so heavily oppressed that. What?
Dude, you are kicked back.
Dude, I'm lounging, but I'm just set up in my thoughts right now.
Sorry,
man.
I just had to take that in for a second.
I'm cozy right now.
Yeah,
I got the microphone pulled over. No, but you're so you're either forced into a war or you're so oppressed that it's hell anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's historical. History repeats itself, you know. We have to pay attention. We are very fortunate. Stephen mentioned it earlier. I can't express how fortunate we are to live in the United States. Again, something that would make people roll their eyes for some reason. That you're an ignorant fool if you don't believe that. I have been to, I think, 12 different countries now in my life. And there were some really cool ones, but I'll tell you right now, after being in those countries, you know, and some of them were good established countries, but every time I was like, all right, I kind of want to go back home.
Yeah.
You know,
you can like feel it.
It's just different. And there's a different mentality there. You can feel, even in some of those more established countries, you can feel that it's more oppressed. It's more draconian, and you know, you can't just say whatever you want.
Yeah.
You know, you get that feeling. And we have a unique experimental governmental system here, and it is being degraded. It's being degraded, it's being corrupted, it's being constantly pulled in different directions. And this whole patriot mentality and like willingness to stand up and fight for freedom is it starts now in the system we have, where violence isn't necessary, you know.
Yeah. And
if you're the kind of person that only views it as, you know, I'll be here when the violence starts, you're in the wrong, you're not in the right place mentally with this.
No, you're not. And then you got to also consider, like, I'm sure there's other countries that have thought that way too, and it went very poorly for them, you know. So it's like, you have no guarantee that you're going to be able to actually win what you lost back with violence. There's no guarantee there.
Yeah.
So you need to take every measure there is to keep that. Like, yeah, if you fail at, you know, if you fail going the way that we're talking about, then maybe there is the next level up, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be. But I'm just saying, like,
yeah, like, obviously we're not saying you shouldn't, like, we're not saying don't fight if you need to.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be standing idly by and waiting either. There's a reason. You can see it just in our amendments. First Amendment, freedom of speech. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. We got to use our freedom of speech while we have it. And if that gets taken away, then it's time to bear arms.
Yep.
And it's a good thing we had this. And if you pay attention, you'll see that, like, both those amendments are constantly under attack. But the one that gets focused on more heavily is big number 2, because that's physical defense.
That's how you protect the first one.
Yep.
So if you can take out the second one, then you can take out the first one.
But this is just part of this whole mentality. And if you aren't believing that, or if you aren't practicing that currently, I highly encourage you to change your, or maybe not change right away, but just sit back and think about it and really process, like, man, maybe I should be a little more involved. And I know people get it's not just people being lazy or people being how would you describe someone that's like blaming it on corruption and stuff? So I know there's, honestly, I think it's just an excuse to be lazy, but there's people that are kind of lazy about it, or complacent, or they use excuses.
But they say like, oh yeah, my word doesn't mean anything anyways.
Yeah. So it's not just people like that. I think the majority of people, it's just ignorance. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I'm saying like they just don't know, and that's kind of what we wanted to do with this podcast, is really break down the process. And then also I think it's intimidation. I think people are a little intimidated to get involved,
Yeah.
And I see that one more commonly. I think it's people, they're like, man, I can't speak, very well. Like, I don't know how to like gather my thoughts. I'm not an eloquent speaker, or they feel like they have to like get up there and be like,
I'm not either. So,
for thou shalt understand the way of the amendments and the way of the people, and the freedom set thereforth. No, you don't need to like you don't need to be able to talk like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. And what I usually tell people is like, if you are going to make a call, and you don't even have to call, you can email, but we might as well get into this. But let me back up for a second. So I think people are intimidated or kind of scared or shy to reach out. They think like, I don't want to sound dumb.
Yeah, you
I
get
don't want to
wrapped into way
misunderstand
more
it.
than you bargained for potentially.
Yeah,
like that's
like, what if they call me back and I'm not prepared, and it's like, first of all, they understand. Most of them understand that people don't fully understand everything, which works to their advantage. They love people like that, because then they can call back and be like, well, this is actually what's going on, and they can kind of spoon feed you.
Yeah.
For their,
their
spoon
agenda.
feed you for their agenda. Yeah, exactly. But anyways, yeah, it's, so I understand that. And I know that not everybody's an eloquent writer, and they can do these really articulate written kind of thoughts and papers on to email or mail, and then, or people may not be well spoken enough to call. And like for me, I wouldn't say I'm super well spoken, but I can confidently speak about what I believe in.
Yeah.
So if I'm not too scared if someone answers the phone, like when you call, 9 times out of 10, you get a voicemail. You have to leave a voicemail with your representative or senator office.
Yeah.
Generally, your area should have a office that represents them.
Mm-hmm.
So like a local office. Like, for example, our senators, Dan Sullivan and Lisa Murkowski, have offices here on the peninsula. They're never there, so they're not going to answer the phone. An aide may, but honestly, most of the times I've done it, actually, I think every time but one time, Dan Sullivan's office had an aide answer the phone for me one time. But almost every time it's a voicemail. But I think people are like scared, like, well, what if they answer the phone? Like, I was talking to somebody, he's like, oh, you told me I was going to get a voicemail, and then they answered. I just hung up. I didn't know. I was like, I didn't know what to do.
No.
And I was like, what? It's like, well, just say what you're going to say on the voicemail. So then that person called back and ended up getting the voicemail, and they left a message. But it's like, just have, what I usually tell people is, if you want to make a call, get a piece of paper, just write down some thoughts, like jot down some bullet points of things you want to cover, and just talk to them. Just talk to the person.
Rattle them off as fast as you possibly can.
Okay, I'm going to read you some points really quick. One, just start rapping it. I got way too many napkins.
Oh, no, dude.
That Chris D'Elia.
Chris D'Elia just ended the podcast.
Yeah. Blamikins. He's doing that's super random. I don't know what made me think of that, but
anyways.
Chris D'Elia Chris D'Elia makes fun of how Eminem raps, and it's pretty funny. Anyways, I derailed myself.
Yeah, you were talking about talking on the phone.
Yeah. So write down some thoughts on a piece of paper. Or if you're confident in what you believe, then just call and be like, all right, I'm just going to have a conversation.
Yeah. They're just people.
Yeah.
There's not anything special about them.
Yeah.
As much as they want you to think there is.
And kind of approach it. I mean, be respectful, but set yourself up for success in your mentality when you contact these people. Like, they work for you. So call them kind of like an employer. Be like, hey, I'm curious what's going on right now. Like, well, how can we help you? Well, this stuff's happening and I don't like this stuff. So what's going on? What are we doing to keep this stuff from happening? Because when you ran, you weren't for this stuff. Or, or if they are, you're like, hey, I want to know why you're supporting this stuff. Like, I need to understand where you guys are, what's going on here. I need better explanation because I don't believe in this. I don't think this is right. I don't want this. I don't want you representing me in this manner.
Yeah. Because
that's the relationship. And again, be respectful. You don't want to be a giant douchebag because then they're not going to want to work for you or work with you. Work for you, kind of. But you need to have a working relationship with them. And then the other way is to write emails. And an email should just kind of be an automatic, like, yes, I'm going to do this. Anytime something happens, you should just sit down at some point, in your week and write an email. And just do it at some point. I mean, some people are really good about it. I'll be the first to admit I'm not, as far as like timing. Like, something will happen. I'm like, I need to send an email. And it'll be like 2 weeks later. I'm like, and I'll sit down and actually write that email. Or sometimes I'm like, it's like that night, if it's like on my mind, but my brain kind of like jumps around and I end up on other things really quick. And then I forget. I've gotten better this last year about setting reminders in general for myself, just to kind of better organize myself. But so I'll usually do that. Like, if I feel like I need to write an email or something, or if I see something, I'm like, okay. So that's something you can do, but sit down and write something. It doesn't have to be, again, you don't have to write, the letters of Parliament out. It needs to just be, it just has to be some general thoughts on what you think and what you're not approving of and what you want done.
Yeah.
Again, they're supposed to represent you. Something else that is really handy is that you have a lot of these email templates that exist on stuff. So if you're following the right sources, which we'll give you some sources shortly, and I'll put them in the description as well. But if you're following the right people that are kind of like-minded, a lot of them go through the extra effort to make like an email template that they've written. It has everything in it that, they believe should be kind of brought up. And you can read through those emails, and if it represents kind of your thoughts on it, you can just fill out your personal information, boom, 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 and send it.
Yep.
So the thing to understand about that, though, is that, and there's different versions of it. Some of them work good. Some of them actually use your email it kind of forwards it to your email, and then your email forwards it, or I'm not exactly sure how it works, but a lot of them use some kind of a third-party provider, I guess, that handles the actual sending. And you'll hear some of them advertise like, never hit spam folders and stuff like that. Because what a lot of them do is, unfortunately, because it's mass emails, thousands of emails coming in and hitting this one representative's email, they end up in spam boxes, spam folders. Because the email algorithm or the email system detects it as spam because it is spam. I mean, that's the definition of spam, is like the same thing being spammed over and over again,
Yeah.
So it's also really good on rice wrapped in seaweed, but little musubi. No, but anyways, it a lot of times will end up in spam folders, and then it never actually gets seen, or some of it gets seen, So what I recommend doing is taking those, still use them. I think they're great sources. But then if you really like what it says, copy paste it. So copy the field, because a lot of times you have a chance to like read the email field, and you can actually edit it if you want. So I would recommend personalizing the field as best you can in the template, if it allows you to do that. And then copy that template and open up your own personal email correspondence with them,
Yep.
So then it's from you. and it's not connected to any other thing. And then you can change that thing. You can actually completely personalize it. And I do recommend doing that because I've gotten better results out of that. So write Senator Dan Sullivan, or, write who you want it to go to specifically in there. And you can copy paste. The majority of what it is will be really well written. It'll be from that source. Someone like Firearms Policy Coalition does it a lot, and they're a fantastic source that I recommend following. Firearms Policy Coalition, you can look them up on Instagram. Get on board with them. Financially support them if you can. But they do this stuff a lot. So you can use what they've already written and then kind of personalize it in your own email and send that out. And that has to get responded to. That's part of the responsibility of like the people that represent the state, the senators and the House representatives, congressmen. They are required to some level to eventually respond to you. It does take them time, and it depends on where you live. And you need to know your district's representative too. Like if you live in California, you need to look at your district and be like, okay, this is my guy or gal. So make sure you're reaching out to the right people. That doesn't mean you can't reach out to other people. I mean, go the extra mile and reach out to everybody. But those are the people that are sitting in that legislative process that we talked about at the beginning. Those are the actual people that sit in that room and vote on stuff.
Yep.
So we have the freedom in this country to directly express our opinions on something they will then go vote on your behalf. That's the thing that I really want. If you take anything from this, understand that you can directly speak to, and it is direct in some ways. Like I've always gotten a response on my personal emails.
Yep.
On those temple ones, I don't get responses from those, so I don't know what happens there.
They can probably go in spam, like you said.
Yeah, but my personal emails, it might take a few days, it might take a few weeks, but in my personal emails, I get a response back. Generally, it's a probably from an aide, or something like that. But they respond back and they say, thank you so much for reaching out. Here's my thoughts on it. If they don't agree with what I said, they'll explain why. And then you've started a conversation. You have a correspondence with that office, and you can start to have a dialogue with them. And the earlier you start that, the better, and the more effective it is. And get other people on board that feel the same way you do.
The more people that are reaching out saying they don't agree with, or they agree, with some bill, agree or disagree, the more likely you're going to be able to actually make a difference on that subject.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh man, I'm getting hit up a lot about this one.
Yep.
Which is going to be like, because they want to stay there. They want to stay in office.
Yeah.
So they don't want to get
they don't want to get voted out.
Yeah.
And be open. Be like, hey, this is not why I voted for you. Or tell them, hey, I did not vote for you, but, I respect that you now represent me, and here's what I think.
Yeah.
Like, be completely open with them. But it's really cool. The email correspondence is like, that email thread exists now in your inbox, right? So you can go back. I like it because you can go back and the more you get into this, the more like stuff you start doing it about. And then it's kind of nice to be able to be like, wait, what's this email about? Oh, this is about, HB 62 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's nice. And then I usually the email is a done deal. Like I try to do that no matter what. And then I'll try to also do a call, and I usually say I've emailed your in the voicemail. I say, hey, I've already emailed your office, but I wanted to personally call and express kind of what I'm thinking, just to give you a little more clarity on my opinions, and I want you to, and to better express to you what I think should be done, or however you want to say it. But I usually say something along those lines of like, I've sent you an email, so then they know like, okay, and I tell them my name, because they usually in the voicemail it usually says something like, and I'm tempted to just call him right now and just do it on here so you can hear what it sounds like. But
are you just gonna do it?
I'm thinking about it. We might stick it at the end. So yeah, I'm tempted to. Anyways,
we can just edit it in at the end.
Okay.
We can literally put it right at the end if you want.
So Where was I?
I just derailed you.
That's okay.
You call, you say, hey, I sent an email.
Yeah, so generally the email will say, like, please tell us. This is why I'm reluctant to do it, because you have to say, like, where you live and a bunch of stuff like that in the voicemail. Voicemail is what I'm talking about.
I can cut that out.
Okay, well, we'll think about it. If it's at the end, then sweet, and if not, then I don't know. But anyways, it'll ask you, where do you live? What's your full name? Where do you live? Generally the voicemails have something like that. Please tell us your full name, where you reside, blah, blah, blah. And so you give that information, and then, you can say, like, I usually say, hey, this is my name. I'm a small business owner, blah, blah, blah. And I'll just kind of give the information they ask for. And then you just rattle off why you're calling. And in that voicemail is where I would reference, I have been emailing you, and I'd love to hear back from you on the phone as well, and be friendly, respectful, open, offer to have a conversation, I'd love to have further dialogue with you. I'm open to having a phone call conversation with you or with one of your aides, and if you're not open to do that, then don't say you are. You don't have to do that. But if you're comfortable doing that, I would encourage it, because that shows initiative, and that shows that you value it, and you value your own time, and you also value their feedback. These are good things to say. But if you don't, then just say, here's what I'm concerned about, and I would like you to reconsider your vote, or I would like you to take these things into consideration in the future, or whatever it is, whatever it applies to, or like specifically for HR 6225. Like, hey, I am directly opposed to HR 6225. I think this further chips away at what should be a constitutional right and freedom, and this is making it harder and harder for people to be able to defend themselves. And I am in complete opposition of it, and I would like you to reflect that as you represent me. It can be as simple as that. So, I think it's it gets too easy. And that phone call, like I said, 9 times out of 10, you'll get a voicemail, especially if you live in a very populated state. I'd be blown away if they're answering the phones there.
I would be
blown
too.
away. Because think about all the thousands of people that call about the weirdest stuff.
Oh yeah.
And let me take that back. If it's important to you, it's not weird, and you should be calling about it. But I think, well, I've talked to some people that work in politics, and they're like, man, you'd be blown away at the stuff that people care about, and I could only imagine. I mean,
yeah,
weird stuff. But anyways, if it's important to you, it's important to you, and you have the right to bring it up.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
Yeah. Any other tips on like getting in contact with people?
I mean, not really. Those two ways are like the most effective ways you can, like, calling someone. It doesn't get much better than that, and then unless you meet them in person.
Yeah.
And then, which that's kind of, I don't know, that's more chance than anything. I feel like with that situation, it's like you're not gonna go like track them down and try to figure out where they're at. Like,
right.
Oh, they're gonna be in our town this day. I'm gonna go meet them.
Yeah.
But you could if you knew that they were going to be somewhere, you could just talk to them in person. But I think ultimately phone calls and emails are easy, and like you said, you get a response back. They obviously see it, so
yeah. And
sometimes you get to like physically talk to them on the phone as well, like personally. So
yeah, yeah. I would say it's rare to get talked to personally, but you will get a call back.
Well, there's been times where like we've been requested to like have like meetings.
Yep. Yeah. I've been in a meeting with Lisa Murkowski, and we had a meeting that we were both going to go to with Dan Sullivan, but it got canceled because somebody got COVID or something that was going to be hosting it or something like that. So that meeting got postponed. So we're supposed to still go to that, but yeah, I mean, and this is stuff that, even just saying that, it's like, back when I was in my early 20s, I would have been like, well, you must be heavily involved. It's like, no, not really. We just have been in a lot of conversations and, have made connections, and then they want to know your opinion. That's the thing, is that it's another thing I want to bring up. these people don't know everything. And good politicians are aware of that, and they want to bring in people that have a better understanding and can give them better, more professional perspective on certain things.
Yeah.
So they'll lean on people. Like, for example, one that, happens pretty often is like, it happens for tons of stuff, but like the homeowners association or something like that, which they'll sit down with them and be like, well, what do we need to be aware of with the building industry right now, or whatever, or I meant the builders association is what I meant, but, or like, the homeowners association, like what's the current market like and what are we seeing? And so they sit down with people like that, and that's kind of what the NRA was supposed to be at its core at the beginning. And it still is to some extent, but it's very, very, ingrained into a lot of the back scratching kind of corruption. Like, well, we'll support what you guys are trying to do, but we need a donation. And like, and a lot of that stuff starts to happen behind closed doors. And so the more you can be involved as an individual and try to get in on these things and just ask, like, no one's going to be weirded out. Like, if you're like, hey, is there any way I can sit in on the, or schedule a meeting, just start asking. It's up to you on how involved you want to be, but you can get a lot more involved, I think, than you realize. I think that's the whole point of this whole thing.
Yeah. And like I said before, they're just people, so you shouldn't be intimidated to reach out to them because they do work for us. So make sure that they know it.
Yeah. So, kind of in conclusion here, as we kind of wrap up, unless you got anything else you wanted to jump in and add.
No.
I don't want to, we can only say this so many times before it's super redundant. And this is something we're going to come back into and visit, and we'll get a lot more specific on certain things, especially like, things that pertain to this industry and just anything that's overall like a major infringement on just overall freedoms. I think we're going to talk about. It's not just going to be, honestly, we're not just going to regulate things in this podcast to gun related stuff by any means.
Yeah.
It'll be anything that we're like, man, this is dangerous. This needs to be talked about. That was kind of a mistake I think we made early on with DDS Unscripted, is we intentionally at the beginning said, we're not going to be political, blah, blah, blah. We kind of fell into that trap a little bit. Because at the time, there were so many podcasts. Like, actually, when we first started, because we started this podcast back in 2018, like the beginning of 2018. And I think, right?
Yeah.
I think there actually weren't very many gun industry or like kind of gun-related podcasts at the time.
Now there's quite a bit.
There's a bunch now, which is awesome. Over the last couple of years, they've really added up, but there just weren't. There was only a few, and they were all political.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the time we were like, well, let's try to start a podcast that's more about like talking about gear and preparedness and kind of the same stuff that we generally talk about now. But, if you want to hear more about what our thought process was there, we talked about it in our very first podcast after we rebranded, which is that Unscripted to Initiative, which is, from DDS Unscripted to Minutemen Initiative. Pretty much the core is the same. We just kind of rebranded and got a little more dialed in on our direction, I think.
Yeah.
So, but point being, we first started saying we're not going to be political. There's already people doing that. And then as time went on, we were like, no, we are going to be political because I think it's our responsibility to help, disseminate information to our audience. There may be people in our audience that
don't know,
that don't hear about things. So it would be a disservice to our audience and to our customer base and to the people that listen to not take time to share what we think and share kind of our concerns and stuff. Yeah. So that's something that is going to be a major part of this one. Anytime something comes up, we're going to do our best not to cram it down people's throats, but like we said, this is just part of it. This is part of the overall mission. And in fact, this is the forefront right now. And that's kind of what, we need to focus on the fight we're facing now, which is the political fight. It's being involved in politics. It's being involved in voting. It's being involved in candidate selection. It's being involved in, bills and laws that are being worked on, understanding the whole process, understanding your rights in the process, understanding how you can influence and affect the process as a citizen. This stuff is in place for us. And it's one of the very few governments that gives that much power to its people. But the power is not available if we don't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say is, try not to get tunnel visioned in or on like things that you have avoid unknown matters in the future. You know what I mean? Like, you get people all the time are like, well, I'm preparing for the next Civil War, or like I'm preparing for the EMP attack, or I'm preparing for the economic collapse that's going to happen in 2025, or whatever it is. Sure. Should you be prepared? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. It's people get so tunnel visioned on that kind of stuff, but then have no. It's like they have no. Would be the right way to say it. There's no sense of urgency right now.
Yeah,
like stuff's happening now.
They're wasting what they have right now, and getting almost like that same. You always talk about the analysis paralysis, but kind of that same thing.
Yep.
You're looking so far in the future that you're not actually doing anything that you could be doing now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, I'm just gotta be prepared for this because you're like so just like, I don't know, tunnel visioned in on that.
Yeah.
You're not actually doing what you could be doing to actually help now where you're currently, like your current state is. So.
Yeah. And kind of like what we already said, I mean, if you value training and preparing and coordinating with others and working together and building relationships, for the betterment of you and your community, if that's like something you've really made an individual responsibility, then it's a no-brainer. This should be pulled right in with that. It's in the same circle. It's in the same disciplines.
Yeah.
Like this is just part of that responsibility. It's part of that effort. And if you're putting effort into all that other stuff, then this is part of that,
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, being involved politically, I mean, it is one of the most, I guess it's the ultimate citizen responsibility. It's what being a citizen is all about, It's not just about being a slave and being subservient.
No,
we're citizens. We're ultimately the ones that maintain and move our country forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only do that by being involved in politics at some point. This taboo kind of feel and I guess way around or atmosphere around being political, it needs to end.
Yeah.
It's not taboo. It's fundamental. It's fundamental in who we are as Americans. And I think we've lost that. I think people are starting to look at it again, but I think like right around like after the major world wars and when we started going to more peacetime, and people were so focused on like, I just want to do whatever I want to do. You guys deal with it,
Yeah.
Band-Aid stuff. Like put a Band-Aid on it. I don't care. Like okay, you require that now? Well, that's fine. It doesn't that won't affect me. Too much of that. And now we're in this state of like surveillance and policy and mandates, things that are like people are like, what? Like, how is this allowed? It's like, well, it wasn't, but now it is because people traded freedom for safety. That's a big one. There's other reasons too, or people traded freedom for comfort. People traded freedom for individuality. Like, it's funny because a lot of people think that, that we've become more progressive for individuals. In reality, it's like, no, it's done is alienate the majority of the populace.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, and it's complacency. I mean, complacency, people sitting back, going about their lives, trying not to put effort into it, doing the bare minimum. And that's got to end. And if you are listening to this and you're like, I agree wholeheartedly, I'm right there with you guys, I'm 100%, like, I have agreed with everything you've said, or like, or even more so, you're like, why are they talking about this? Like, who's not thinking this way? Start to look around you and start to bring others in your circle and beyond kind of into the light. Bring them into the light.
Yeah.
Like, influence people, inspire people, help people understand this stuff. Take time to explain to them, because your effort doesn't just stop at like you and your politicians. It's also your peers, people around you. Start conversations. Like you said, gone should be the days of like, we don't talk politics at the dinner table. That comes from a place of like, people get heated and it starts big fights and arguments. If you can't sit there and have a
decent conversation,
a responsible, level-headed conversation about what you believe, then take a close look at yourself and clean your room.
Yeah, clean your room, clean your mind.
Yep. You got to work on yourself so you can start to work on the work on everything around you. I can't believe how hard it is to just have a simple conversation with people, and it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
All this stuff I've said applies to people that don't believe the way I believe at all, and I want them to be involved as well.
Yeah. I
don't care if you are completely opposed to all of my thoughts and ideas. Good luck to you. I'll be voting on my side, and you be voting on your side, and you have the right to do that. That's the thing too, is like, this is not silence one side so the other can thrive.
Yeah.
That needs to stop too. I get frustrated when I see that on the more conservative side. Like, well, we need to go to, we need to just go to this social media that's all Republicans. And it's like, no, we don't. Not at all. That's not going to help anything.
No.
Then you're just in an echo chamber just talking to yourself.
Yeah.
It's all the same ideas bouncing around. It's like, yeah, I feel good. Everyone agrees with me. No, your
it's
opinion.
Like the equivalent of a safe space in the social media world.
Yeah.
I'm in my safe space.
No, the world is not a safe space. You need to be bold. And now, more importantly than ever, if you're the one that's being silenced and prevented and alienated and ostracized on social media, then now more than ever is the time for you to be more bold about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there needs to be more of that. That's a whole other topic for a different time about how you can be more vocal openly and stuff like that. But ultimately, if more people took seriousness in talking to their representatives and opening up dialogue with those that are around them and in their personal lives, like people that you talk face to face with, I think it would be a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. That's all we got for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a great place to stop. If anybody has anything they want to add, we'd love to hear about it. Please email us. Like, if you've made it this far and you get to our emails, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and ideas. Give us any criticism too. Like, if you're like, man, you guys are just stupid, you guys are off base, tell us. We want to know, Or if you're like, hey, man, like, good stuff, let's hear more about this side of it. Or if you've just got a random topic, you're like, I want to know these guys' thoughts on that, hit us up. Dynamic Defense Solutions AK at gmail.com. Dynamic Defense Solutions AK at gmail.com. Don't forget the AK, because then I don't know who that email is going to, but that email was already taken if it's just Dynamic Defense Solutions. So make sure the AK is in there. Yeah, or you can hit us up. You can just message us on the contact form on our website, which our website's dynamicdefensesolutionsak.com. So, yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Message us on Instagram. That's honestly the easiest way to talk to us. We both usually see it, and we see it pretty fast. It's like, because it's like text
Sometimes
message
we
speed.
both respond.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you get two different comments, like when you message us on Instagram, it's probably because we both responded at the same time.
Yeah. Steven's so on it. I have to remember when he's like, when you're on your week off,
Yeah.
I have to be like, okay, Steven's, I have to like hold off and wait. And usually I'll just sit there and look at it and I'll see like like a response pop up. I'm like, yep. And I'll just put my phone down like he's on it. But obviously when you're on your week at work, then I got to get on it. But and if you message us on Facebook, just know that I am no longer allowed to be on the Facebooks. So
you're talking to me.
You're going to, if it's like a week goes by and you didn't get any responses, that's because
I'm usually pretty good to still check it at night.
Yeah.
Because I get a notification, but
yeah,
it's usually
that's
me
good.
though. Unless for whatever reason you can get on Facebook, which I don't think you can ever.
I can through desktop, but it's super weird, and I gotta like do this like submission thing every time, and I don't. It's dumb. It takes forever.
Yep.
So I'm basically not on it. It's weird because I'm on it, like it says I am. Like I have a profile on Facebook, but I have no access to it. Like I'm completely. Every time I try to log in, it's like this action has failed. You have been banned from your account, or I don't know what it says, something along those lines.
The Donald Trump of Facebook.
I don't know about that. That's the thing. I have like, I only had like 300 followers or something. It's not like I was anybody special. I don't know what I did. Apparently I violated community standards in some way. So whatever.
That's the way it goes.
Some admin stumbled upon me and was like, this guy's dumb, and just banned me. So fair enough. But this is important stuff. Take it seriously, and it's a warfare. I mean, this is a political warfare, and you got to get involved in it. You got to understand the tactics of it. You understand the tactics of the other side. It's a battlefield, and break down the Met TC of the battlefield, and get after it. Get involved. So on that, let's just make that call.
Yeah.
Screw it.
Let's do it.
Let's see. Let me pull it up here. I've already called the reps, so I'll go ahead and call Senator Sullivan's local office here, and let's see how it goes. Probably going to be a voicemail, but may not.
We just get them.
You have reached the Kenai Kodiak Field Office of U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan. We're sorry we missed your phone call. Please leave your name and number, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you wish to leave the Senator a public opinion message, please do so after the beep. Leave your name, number, address, and the message you would like Senator Sullivan to receive. For immediate assistance, you may call our Anchorage office at area code 907-271-5915. Thank you and have a great day. After you leave a message, you can modify it by pressing pound.
Hi, my name is Jacob Barlow, and I am a Alaska resident. I live in Soldotna, and I'm also a small business owner here on the Kenai Peninsula. And I just wanted to call and let Senator Sullivan know kind of some beliefs that I have and some things that I'm a little bit concerned about. Firstly, I would like him to oppose the nomination of Steve Dettelbach for ATF director. I do not believe he has the best interests of the American people in mind, and I do not think he's fit to serve as director of the ATF. The other thing I'd like him to be aware of is HR 6225, 6225. I do not believe this is at all helping anything. As a small business owner, I actually am a owner in the firearms industry, and my business has a federal firearms license. So not only would this directly affect my line of work, but I do not believe it does anything to protect the American people, and it just further damages the constitutional right that we have through the Second Amendment and the inalienable right that we all share as humans. So I just want him to be aware of these things, and I oppose both of them, and I would hope that he reflects that as he represents us. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it.